Hello world! Here with me today is a human who is shaking up the marketing ops world, and his informative, educational, and debate-worthy professional posts across social media. He's renowned for writing about marketing and how to improve your work and your life. With a following of over 30,000 on LinkedIn alone, my next guest is a true example of how to become a thought leader on LinkedIn and build a healthy network. Please welcome Darrell Alfonso, Amazon Web Services Global Marketing Ops Guru, to the show. Now, I just want to say, Darrell has been named one of the top MarTech marketers to follow in 2020 by MarTech Alliance. He's been a keynote speaker for Get Stacked B2B Marketing Conference in 2021, and he's been awarded Fearless Marketer in 2018, along many other accolades that if I continued to list, we'd probably have to cut the podcast short. So Darrell, welcome to the show. Are you ready to get radically transparent with me?
Yes, I am so ready. Thank you for that intro. It was fantastic. You're really good at this.
Thanks. Listen, it was, I like to call myself the accidental podcaster a little bit. A lot of people ask me, how did you get into it? And the funny story is, last year we started this podcast, and the lesson I learned as a marketer was never ever walk into a strategy meeting that your CEO is leading and give a brainstormed, not fully thought out idea, because if you do that, you're going to get action. So here we are today, but I'm super glad that happened, because I would have never had the opportunity to meet you. And what I'd love to dive into to open the show and really get radically transparent, because I do think every one of our guests has such an individual and unique journey to how they found themselves where they are today. I'd love to learn a little bit more about yours. I mean, you're at Amazon Web Services. If you go on to LinkedIn, I mean, your posts are on fire. And I would just love to learn, how did you get where you are today?
Wow. Okay. So I will say, starting way back, I actually went to college as a bio major, and I thought I wanted to go into healthcare. And I
Really?
found out that I was terrible at it. And and I'm just glad, because if I was taking care of people today in a healthcare setting, I would have done terrible. And so I barely made it through college and shifted majors a lot. After college, really soon after, I joined a startup where it was a bootstrap startup in Southern California. We were selling MarTech software, which is my introduction to MarTech. And I just became so consumed in sort of the startup and then just business culture in general, because I found that it was really like a game, sort of. And this isn't really a new concept, but you could essentially try different things, try different sales and marketing tactics, and see if your score went up. And the score is like your revenue. So I just became so enamored with it. Went to business school during that time, and then started that really kind of kicked off my marketing career. So fast forward several years later, I became really good at marketing automation. And the reason why I got into that was I wanted to get a high paying marketing job as a not so tenured marketing professional, right? I was pretty young. So I'm just like, hey, how can I get a high salary? And I found that most of the jobs, especially in general marketing, were super competitive. It was so hard to get. And you got that quandary that everybody's in of like, how can I get the experience if you're not going to give me a job, right? So I always fell into that. And then I discovered marketing automation. Nobody at the time knew how to do it. This was like 10 years ago. No one at the time knew how to do it. I learned it on my own, got a job managing a Marketo instance, so like a large marketing automation platform, and quickly got a seat at the table with very senior marketers because they didn't really know how to use it. So personally, it helped me. And then professionally, I found out that tons of people were in the same boat. No one also very few people knew how to do it. So I started writing and I started contributing. That was my beginning of my sort of like advocacy and sort of community contribution type part. And then it kind of continued from there. I mean, at first it was only in sort of the Marketo and marketing automation world, where I still consider, to be my family. But I started to like branch off beyond that because I thought, hey, there's marketing operations folks and marketing people are trying to do so many different parts of marketing. Why only stop with marketing automation? And yeah, that's when I started to write on LinkedIn and other channels, and sort of how I started my, I don't know, I kind of consider myself, which is funny, I almost consider myself kind of a blogger, if you will, just on like LinkedIn, because I more of like write more of very short articles. So that's kind of how I consider myself. But that's my long-winded story of how I got to where I am.
Listen, I love that long-winded story and, a true confession. I think, many of us marketers, right? There's this huge debate today, and we can find this in so many places. Should marketers be better IT trained? And when you're talking about the MarTech stack, there's such a mix of, right, you need to be creative and you need as a marketer, but you also really need to understand technology. So you almost came into it at, perfect timing, because right now, I know it's an employee's market right now, but if you look across marketing jobs hiring, I think marketing ops, and hey, for anyone listening, we're hiring marketing ops, right? This is maybe today one of the most sought after roles in any company, especially after COVID, being able to communicate thoughtfully, authentically, and really personalized messaging to your potential buyers using marketing automation. I mean, it's huge. So I'm really excited to have you on the show. I wish we had more than just 30 minutes to dive into all of this. But what I do want to ask to kick off, now that we know a little bit about your journey and the failed biology, please know, we're so proud you're in marketing and happy that we're secretly happy you failed there. But just knowing the world we live in today, and also knowing, I know you mentioned, Marketo was the first marketing automation platform that, you got your hands on. But, when I think of Marketo, I also sometimes think of those dots of doom. And I'm sure that there's no shortage of what might be keeping you up at night professionally in your role, especially today as marketing ops, especially as things get more digitally heavy, if you will. I think the more and more we kind of transition and transform into this digital first world. So could you share a little bit if there's anything, that might be keeping you up?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. I have two answers. One is marketing ops focused, and then the other one is sort of on, my other sort of work for the industry. But I'll start with the marketing ops one. And I think one of the big ones is that market. I think that marketing operations is still very much treated in many companies as the order takers and as the sort of back end office people, sort of behind the scenes. And the initiatives that they're working on, I don't think companies and leaders understand how much effort is required to managing a MarTech, stack and ecosystem, if you will, and all of the different things and sort of, I don't know, um, really smart and really thoughtful things that we need to do operations correctly. I think that people don't understand that, and it's hard to grasp unless you're doing it. You know what I mean? So I think me and many others are trying to champion this idea of operations as strategic partners and strategic advisors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think we're really making a difference, and people are starting to notice. And as you said, the industry itself, or the profession itself, is growing at such a high clip that I think the direction that we're going is so exciting. But it doesn't mean that everyone's there yet. It's actually only the sort of leaders of the crowd, the people that are like out scouting in the forefront, that are experiencing this.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got like 90% of the market that's not like that. and even like within my own organization, sometimes you can really see that the operational, the data and the systems type thinking isn't really prioritized. And it's too bad that it's like that. But I know that I'm optimistic because myself and many others are championing this idea that operations is a differentiator. So at work and in marketing operations, I think that that's one thing that keeps me up and I feel sort of, whatever about, but I'm still optimistic.
And you shared, I know that you're quite the influencer when it comes to, content and really championing that world on LinkedIn. And you mentioned there was a second thing keeping you up at night, and I
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And this is one of the reasons why I was excited to come onto this podcast, because I know you talk about social media and I know you talk about all things socials, and this is something that I actually don't get to talk a lot about. So because I usually talk about marketing operations. So one thing that I'm trying to balance is so I'll first preface this by saying, and I haven't heard this very much, but I actually think there's a difference between building a strong professional and personal brand
Mhm.
and then building a following and an audience. And I think that they're actually separate. Because I think a good professional brand means that the people that you work with and the people that like look to you have your sort of respect, from an intellectual perspective and the way that you think and the way that you work and the results that you can deliver. I actually think that it doesn't have to be a very large amount of people that know that, just a few key people. So even you don't have to have a following to have a really strong professional brand. I think building a following is a little bit different.
Mhm.
It actually has all of the principles of content marketing and sort of audience building, and they're separate, but they blend. And especially today, there's so much overlap in between the two. And one thing that I've been trying to sort of really balance and kind of toe the edge a little bit is, how do you keep those principles up in the air at the same time? Because I think it is great to build a following and to get the word out about your ideas more and more. But at some point, it starts to, I think the substance starts to leave, the value and the tactical advice and sort of information that you're providing starts to get diluted the broader and broader that you go. So I think that I think for many content creators is a struggle. You know what I mean? Because if you look at the most liked LinkedIn posts on the network, it's going to be all inspirational, but very broad inspirational.
Yeah.
Sort of like believe in yourself.
Yeah.
That kind
Yeah.
of
And
advice.
we see LinkedIn, right? I don't know if you've seen lately, like LinkedIn's been kind of posting like these one-liners, like believe in yourself, or like
Believe in yourself.
like be honest, So it's like there's these like one-liners just kind of floating around, and then you see how many likes and engagements are on those like one-liners of inspiration. It really is interesting.
Yeah. So and but how much value or to your niche and to your profession are you really bringing, by doing stuff like that? I don't think that, not to judge that type of content, but it's different. And I think that what helps me balance it is I sort of come back to goals and the things that I want to achieve, with my personal brand and with the audience that I'm building. And that is to champion the idea that operations can be a differentiator and strategic advisors, and to help those that are especially getting started into operations move forward in their career. And then with a secondary goal of sort of advancing and sort of championing the idea of MarTech in general. So those are things that I think I keep to myself as my sort of guiding light or North Star as I create content. And that helps me to stay balanced. But I find myself very often slipping into, okay, let's just make something funny that people are going to like, or something inspirational that people are going to like. And then, it's a slippery slope. So that's
Absolutely. And
what keeps me up on this sort of content creation
It makes a lot
personal
of
brand.
sense too. I mean, when you go and you look on LinkedIn, someone would see that you're, at Amazon and in marketing ops, and then you're reading. You do have a lot of kind of responsibility to uphold that personal brand and that professional brand. That kind of leads me into my next question, right? We all keep hearing it's important to be on social media because, and the because is probably limitless. Because you need to become a thought leader, because if you're in sales and you're not social selling, you're missing an opportunity. Whether you're in marketing, sales, customer success, product, I don't think there's any place that you go that someone's not going to tell you you need to be on social media. It's encouraged
Yeah.
to be on social media. But I think what's also very interesting as we have this conversation, and why I'm so excited to have you on this show, right? You are someone who has become quite known on social media, quite trusted as a thought leader when it comes to building any sort of marketing ops strategy with the right mindset, right? You have a trusted following. What I want to know, because so many people ask me, and I'm just going to pass it over to you right now, but how do you encourage or how would you advise somebody looking to become a thought leader in their posts? Or I mean, right, what's the best way to get started? Yeah, just go post. But as we were just speaking about, this balance between the inspirational post and the one liners and what's funny, but how really is there a method? How should we be crafting those posts, and where can marketing leaders specifically begin?
Yeah, this is such a good question. And I feel like if you have any questions on tactics, I can talk about that all day just because I've thought about it for so long about the post timing and frequency and format and everything like that. But I'll start with some principles. The first one is um, it's easy to lead with education, and I don't think it'll ever lead you astray. And education is one of the most altruistic versions, frames that you can look at marketing as, and you can look at building your professional brand. And if you don't know where to start, all you have to do is think about teaching something to someone that doesn't know it yet. And there's always someone that is looking to learn what you do, and what how you think, even if you're more junior in your career. So that applies to every different levels. One way is to think about someone 2 or 3 years younger than you and explain like what they're working on, and how you would do it. So I think that that's the easiest way is education. And then the next, and that'll always keep you consistent. Now, long term, I think that if you want to, because you eventually want your post to be sort of thought provoking and not really maybe controversial sometimes, but you want them to be something that they haven't really seen before. And that makes them sort of stop and think and makes an impression. I think that that's something that I think about when I do my posts. I want them to move people to do something or to feel something, or to change the way they think about something. And in order to do that, you actually have to consume a lot. So one of the things that I do like nonstop is I consume podcasts like crazy. And that's how I learned about your podcast. I had been listening to it already. I just like, whether I'm exercising or driving or cooking or cleaning, I'm just consuming podcasts one after the other. And it gives me this frame, this sort of foundation of what people are thinking about and talking about. And then when you sort of combine all of that information into a specific point of view, it naturally stands out, I think.
Makes
So
sense.
that's
Makes
that
sense.
that those two principles of education, and then just of consuming a lot of content in your niche. Those things I think are probably the best places to start.
So, in terms of all the podcasts that you've consumed and the education that you're seeing and writing, I want to ask you, what do you think right now today are the three most interesting or the topics that are most resonating with the marketing ops community today?
Good one. Um, so I think career is the big one, is an important one, because career is like, hey, how do I get promoted working in an operations role when it's not as clearly defined as some of the others? It's not like marketing manager, senior marketing manager, director, VP, CMO, right? It's not really like that. It's very, I think, different and variable depending on what industry you're in, and especially if you bring in consulting. I think career is one of the biggest ones that I try to give advice on, and that I try to help the industry define. Um, that one I think is a big one. I think there's also sort of the balance between being technical and strategic is a topic that comes up over and over again. And I'll never stop harping on this, but you should never let technology drive strategy. It should always be strategy driving technology. And it's so easy to fall into the former of like, hey, our MarTech stack or our marketing automation platform has these features, so that's what we're going to do. And that's totally backwards. Do not do that.
Thank
So
you
that's,
for saying that. For those in the back, could turn up your volume. Could you say that
yeah,
again, right?
yeah. And it's something that I've learned the hard way too. Just like, I remember getting my first marketing automation platform, and I was like, oh, lead nurture, personalized content, automated emails, lead scoring. Like that's what the platform has. So that's going to be my roadmap for the next 12 months. And it does okay, but every business is different, all customers are different, and that may not be the things that your stakeholders and that your customers need. So having strategy drive actual technology and features and implementation, that's so key, to what you have to do. So I would say those are the first two things. And then probably data. I would say data and reporting analytics is the last one, and I think that is sort of pervasive everywhere. How do we become more data driven or data informed in marketing? And how do we use data in everything that we do to improve the customer experience? I think that's probably the third one, if I
That
had to
third
pick.
one there, I think, is definitely, I mean, that could be a whole episode in itself, only because when I
Mm.
think of, Octopost, Marketo, and like all of our MarTech stack, I always just think about we're all collecting so much data, but it really takes the right person to come in to understand, okay, here's all our data. What do we do with it? And
Yeah.
maybe we'll have to have you back on to talk about part two on like what we do with the data in marketing
Totally.
ops to be able to be data driven. But with the sake of time, I have, I'd say, like three more questions. So what I want to know too from you, because I know that you're on social quite a bit, which brands or executives on LinkedIn do you feel right now, besides yourself, because I think you're doing social phenomenally well,
Mm.
but which do you think are doing thought leadership well, or who would you recommend following to kind of see the right way to go about it? Could be brand or an executive.
um so let's see. I'll just name some of my favorites that I think that I watch closely. I like Allie Miller, also
Mhm.
works for AWS, and she posts on AI and machine learning, and then just the overall artificial intelligence sort of industry and startups. I think that she's always been a role model of mine when I look to seek thought leadership content. Um, she's really great. Oh, Julie, I'm going to say her last name wrong. Julie Zhao, I think, who was the former VP of design at Facebook, does really awesome. She has this great book called The Making of a Manager. I also love her content. I love anyone with a really specific point of view, and that's not sort of doing like the natural, like trendy stuff, but speaking from their own experience and then providing just a really smart take on things. I've always just really liked that. So those two people I think are really great. Um, and then I forget his name. I'll have to like email it to you, and maybe you can include in the show notes. But he's the group director at Facebook, and he also writes about tech content. I really enjoy his stuff as well, and it's more of just like commentary on what's happening with the technology industry in general. Those are I think those are people that I like to follow.
We'll definitely go check them out because I think when it comes to thought leadership, again, it's such a hot topic and it's such like a quote unquote buzzword, but at the same time, it can be meaningful, I think, when done right and when done well. And I think there's a very big need for it right now, and how to find your authentic voice and like what you're saying, right? That authentic voice comes from maybe not always doing what's trendy, but doing what works for you as an individual. With that, I have, my last two questions. So, what I want to know in terms of measuring success, social media for so long, how do you measure it? What do you look at? Like, are you looking at likes? Are you looking at comments? Are you looking at, you felt good at the end of the day? Like, how do you measure the success of what you're writing, engaging that you're connecting with your audience?
Well, the first danger is kind of what I mentioned before, is that sort of virality component and trying to sort of chase that, where, I've had a couple of posts that got like thousands of likes. And it was so tempting to try to recreate that. And that I don't think is very sustainable. And also I don't know, I think that can be a little superficial because you're chasing, being sort of provocative for the sake of it, or like entertaining, or super funny just for the sake of it. And I'll always make humorous posts anyway. But I guess what I'm trying to say is be careful of doing those things just to chase those things, because I think it dilutes your overall message and takes you away from that purpose. I think that you can use engagement directionally
Mm-hmm.
as a sort of like a barometer of how well you're doing and how well you're thinking and serving your audience with your content, right? And I like the word barometer because it kind of like feels right, just how you can like feel that it's either humid or really dry in the air. But it's not like the perfect indicator of like, it's not a prescriptive cooking sort of temperature, right? So I like that. I actually know that I'm doing well when I actually get messages from people and from organizations, um, to either speak or to expand on my thoughts. And that I think is a much better indicator of the kind of content and if I'm producing things that make people think and that they want to learn more about. And I've been so fortunate to regularly get invited to conferences. I remember before, if this is like one like upside for personal branding and building your brand, I used to apply to speak at a bunch of conferences, and you have to do this write up and speaker proposal and everything like that, and I would get rejected, and it'd feel like sad, you know what I mean? Ever since I've continued to like build a following on social media, I haven't had to apply to any conferences. I just get invited. And it's sort of the other way around, where they're like, please, can you make time for this conference? It's coming up. There's going to be so many great people there. We really want you there. And it's just, it's very flattering, but also it's just like so nice to have been on the other side trying to apply to get in versus being invited. And I think that that's at least one strong benefit of building like a personal brand / following, is that you get invited to speak to stuff like that.
I love that. So anyone listening in, if you are want to be on the path to being keynote speaker, get that thought leadership content out there. Last question for you, Darrell. So we know that you are a biologist turned marketer. We know that you're a
Fail.
highly sought after public speaker. We know that you're running some of Amazon's most interesting marketing ops approaches and processes and doing really great things there. What I want to know now is what can you tell us, which might be hard for you because you're pretty open on LinkedIn, but what can you tell us about yourself that we won't be able to know from your LinkedIn profile?
That is a good one. Um, I mentioned this to one other person in a professional setting. So it's kind of weird.
Everyone is about to find out. The room goes silent.
So I can do tarot card readings.
What?
Yeah, like I don't know if you're familiar, but it's like fortune telling
Really?
cards. Yeah.
Okay. So wait, this is interesting. So is that something you do, on the weekends for friends, or are you in a little booth with like at a fair? How do you do that?
Well, that would be cool. That would be cool. So I only do it for friends and family, and then I
Okay.
also I often do it for myself. Um,
Wow.
and how it started was I wanted to, I don't know, I've always been very work and like career sort of focused. So I wanted to pick something that I could do that I was interested in that had nothing to do with that. Like could never be anything to do with that. And I'm just like, I've always wanted to get my fortune read, and I've always wanted to wouldn't it be cool to be able to do that for other people? And anyway, it's super fascinating. And maybe next time I'll bring my cards, and then
Yes.
I'll read your fortune. But I
I
will
love
tell
it. A
you.
live show of fortune reading. I don't think it gets any better. Let's get radically
Totally,
transparent.
totally. And it's so fun, and I'll like give away part of the secret now, is that the cards will actually ask you questions. Um, and but it's all about shared human experience. To get a little bit deep there. But like if I were to tell you, like, Jen, you've recently gone through a period of intense change, and you know you ended up, there, it was hard at the time, but you ended up on the other side coming away with things that you wouldn't have had you not gone through that. Doesn't that resonate with you at least a little bit?
There you go.
Because it
Now that you mentioned it, Darrell, I think you're correct. And no, but on a serious note, yes. And what's interesting now, I'm like thinking about what you do, and you do it so well. But, as you build your following and as a thought leader, right, those shared experiences are really meaningful and what keep people connected. So having that ability to read tarot cards coupled with marketing ops ending on LinkedIn is, in my opinion, right, the perfect storm, and perhaps what all of us marketers are missing.
I guess so. I love how you brought that up, because I do agree. I feel like so many of us are living the same stories. They just play out with different characters and into the different setting. Like it's a different set, different stage, but it's so similar. So that's what I found so fascinating about tarot card readings. And also when I just read it for myself, it's very introspective, makes you really reflect.
I
So
love
yeah,
that.
that's a
I love
weird
that.
random fact about
I love the weird rant. So listen, anyone listening, Darrell, if we want to have our tarot cards read with you, if you want to do a little fortune telling, or anyone is listening in, maybe seeking or wants to bounce ideas about marketing ops, or perhaps how to become a thought leader, where is your preferred channel of choice for people to be in connection with you, to speak with you, and to get to know you better?
So it's definitely LinkedIn. I connect with everyone. So if you send me a connection, I'd be happy to accept. And I'm a little bit slow in responding to the DMs, but I try to like allocate time each week to respond to those. So message me and I will get back to you for sure.
Fantastic. Darrell, thank you so much for joining us on the Radically Transparent podcast. And I look forward to having you back. You know, we have a whole list ready from this episode, what to move on to next. So we'll definitely be having you back.
I'm totally down. Thanks for having me, Jen.
Thanks for tuning in to the Radically Transparent podcast, brought to you by Oktopost, the only social media management and employee advocacy platform architected for B2B. I'm Jennifer Gutman, your host and director of social strategy here at Oktopost. And if you love today's show, we'd love if you subscribe, rate, and give a raving review wherever you get your podcasts. For more discussion on B2B social media marketing, be sure to follow Oktopost on LinkedIn. And of course, to gain access to all our free social media marketing and employee advocacy resources, head on over to our website, www.oktopost.com. Until next time.